Chapter 18. The briefing room had been quiet. Even after nearly a week, no one was in the mood for a chat or joshing. The platoon silently came to attention as Franklin and a uniformed woman Sean hadn't seen before entered. Adams followed behind and shut the door, then took up position there. The woman was an attractive blonde, probably in her 30s. 3 pips on her front said she was a captain. Sean took a moment to run the tactical recognition flash on her arm through his memory. A square with its 2 halves divided into dark blue and yellow. That was... Arse, he knew this. Dark blue and yellow was... "At ease, sit down," Franklin instructed curtly. The platoon plonked their arses on the faded brown plastic chairs, which reminded Sean of the thing he'd sat on in the custody van on his way to prison, except perhaps even more uncomfortable. One of the most technologically advanced armies in the world could never quite find the time to bring its buildings into the 21st century. Dark blue and yellow was... "This is Captain Fitzallen of the Royal Logistics Corps." Logistics Corps? Yeah, I totally knew that. "Captain Fitzallen specialises in explosive ordnance disposal, Captain." "Thank you, Lieutenant." An attractive woman and a bomb expert, she had the undivided attention of every man in the room. A laptop and computer projector had been set up at the front of the room, looking almost futuristic compared to the massive cork boards covered with A4-sized notices that lined the walls. She touched a key and the laptop whirred into life, displaying the gold badge of the Corps. "First, the forensics report, which will be made public this afternoon. As her mates, you deserve to know first. We can confirm that the bomb which killed Private Clark and 4 other soldiers was a fertilizer-based explosive planted under the driver's seat of her car." The picture changed to the charred wreck of the Cosworth. It was an image that would be burned into Sean's mind forever. He glared as hated it, wishing that somehow telepathically it would link to the bastard who had planted the bomb and do something useful like fry their brains. The sad fact is that this bomb probably could have been detected if Private Clark had thought to look for it. And with that in mind, it's been decided that all units are to receive a refresher course in bomb awareness. So, here goes. She took the platoon through the details with brisk efficiency, illustrating it with images of actual bomb parts as she went. Any bomb needs a detonator and explosives. Sean sat back and rested the side of his head on his fist as she talked. Some of it he could already have told her, some was new. The Omagh bombing of 1998 used about 200 kilograms of explosive and killed 30 people. Deaths were mostly caused by the supersonic shockwave of the blast and the distribution of shrapnel. But think about 200 kilos of explosive. That's 200 bags of sugar. The Omagh bomb was planted in a stolen car, but for a bomb to be planted in your car, well, you'd notice something that big, wouldn't you? So it's much more likely to be a few kilograms, but still something that should be visible if you take the time to look. Now, what haven't I mentioned? There was a pause until someone put a hand up. The trigger. Exactly. What sets the bomb off in the first place? A pressure device hidden in your car, a timer device, a radio-controlled detonator. More images were shown on the projector. The bottom line is, someone got into your vehicle. There will be signs, if you only take the time to notice. Which brings us on to security. How to leave your car to reduce the chances of someone breaking in, and how to check it before you get in. These habits should be routine for as long as the threat level is severe, as it currently is. The talk went on. Sean mostly paid little attention. He didn't have a car, after all. He could spend the time wondering how Clark's bomb had been planted in the first place, and how it had been set off. Was it coincidence or deliberate that it had been outside the gatehouse as a convoy was coming through? If it was deliberate, then that would have been difficult to fine-tune with a timer. So had it been a remote detonation? Someone would have thought of this. The security people would have gone through the CCTV images with a fine-tooth comb, looking for anyone hanging around with line of sight to the gatehouse. There was no talk of any leads, so it couldn't have been anyone obvious. Clark's death had brought home something Sean had always known but never really appreciated. Terrorists wouldn't be out of the ordinary. They would look so normal that they were basically invisible. They could be the person right next to you. Shit. The talk was over. The platoon came to attention again, and Fitzallen left the room. Franklin stood at the front and surveyed them. Corporal Heaton's section, you all have extra duties to perform. You're dismissed to go and get ready. I'll see you this afternoon. Do her proud, lads. And so it was that 4 hours later, Sean was in his No. 2 service dress, the smartest gear he owned. Khaki tunic and trousers, with creases ironed to razor sharpness, shirt and tie, precisely knotted, white belt with buckle badge gleaming, stony-faced, solemnly helping bear Clark's coffin into St. Michael's Garrison Church. They formed pairs in order of height to carry the coffin. Marshall and Penfold, Mitra and West, Bright and Sean, with Heaton walking behind. The coffin was covered with the Union Jack, with a wreath and Clark's beret resting on top. TV news crews milled about outside, on the far side of the road, anxious to catch the first of the Tidworth bomb's 5 funerals. Inside, the church was full of similar uniforms, the only exception being Clark's family, just as smartly turned out in dark civvy suits and dresses, a mature West Indian couple, dignified in their grief, and a gaggle of brothers and sisters, some with kids of their own. From a soldier's point of view, it was all too formal for tears, though Sean could feel them pricking at the backs of his eyes, and the extra responsibility of being a coffin-bearer meant that he stayed dry-eyed. It was the first funeral he had been to. He hadn't been allowed to go to Gaz's, and he would have been determined to do it properly, even without the added duty. He and the lads were synchronized to the nearest millimetre, to the nearest split second. It was their final tribute to a fallen comrade, giving her the respect she deserved. The service passed in a blur. The company major delivered a tribute to Clark, which sounded good to anyone who didn't realise that he had barely known her. The padre made a better job of it, in Sean's opinion. He pointed out that St. Michael's Church was named for the warrior Archangel, the leader of the armies of heaven that would defeat the forces of evil. Still all bollocks, as far as Sean could tell, but he liked the idea. If you had to die, then you might as well be on St. Michael's side when you did it, fighting evil, whatever form it took. The pallbearers sat in the choir stalls, sideways on to everyone else, ready to take the coffin out again. It gave Sean a good view of Clark's family, nodding quietly during the eulogies, singing the hymns with gusto. Sometimes the mother dabbed her eyes with a hanky. Apart from that, her restraint and the way she held herself somehow communicated a far deeper loss than if she had been howling or wailing. "We let you down," Sean thought, looking at Mrs. Clark. She chose that precise moment to glance up, and their eyes met. He quickly looked away again, but then stole another sideways glance. Her face was kind, and Sean thought he saw her give him a brief nod before turning her attention back to the padre. And what the fuck had that meant? Yes, I know, or I forgive you, or wasn't your fault? Sean knew what he would be saying in her place, and it wasn't any of those. If he was a civvy who had just lost a loved one, he would want to scream, "If you lot can't protect yourselves, how can you protect us?" Then they were outside again. Ranks of soldiers standing at attention while the coffin was loaded into a hearse. They saluted as the hearse moved off, and a small fleet of black limos carried the Clark family after it for the private cremation. "Fall out!" And the funeral was over. "Well, fuck me," said a familiar voice. "I could very easily never have to do that again." Milling around outside the church with the other soldiers, Sean found he was standing next to Heaton. The events of the last few days had drained him of emotion and he just felt tired. They'd also made him re-evaluate the reason why they had fallen out. The thoughts he had been having in the church hadn't helped. Heaton offered him an open cigarette packet, then began to pull away. "No, you don't, do you?" "Cheers," Sean said, and took one before they were gone. Heaton's eyebrows went up. "Filthy habit, Harker." He flicked the lighter on and held it out. "Could get you killed." "Ha, funny." Sean drew in a breath. No, it wasn't really his thing, but he wanted an excuse to keep talking. "Mind if I have a word?" The eyebrows went up again, but Heaton nodded his head slightly down the road. They started to walk. "Clark should have checked her car more," Sean began. "I know that. Doesn't mean that what happened was her fault. I never said it was, mate. We're the best fucking army in the world. Maybe not the biggest, but the best. And we couldn't stop one of our own mates being blown up. So how the fuck are we supposed to protect anyone else?" He waved a hand in the general direction of the perimeter fence. "They're defenseless out there. We've got all the guns in here, but the army can't be everywhere. It isn't allowed to be, and we've got rules of engagement. So in all those places where we can't be, people have to be able to look out for themselves. Stands to reason." Heaton looked at him strangely. "That is the weirdest echo I ever heard. I could have sworn I said all that back in the pub, the time you, let's say, resigned." "Yeah, well, about that." Heaton looked up at him coolly, one eyebrow raised. "Okay, you bastard," Sean thought. "You're gonna make me say it, aren't you?" He swallowed. "That thing you've got going." "Yeah?" "Oh, crap, this is going to be such a bad idea, but I don't know what else to do." "Tell me how it works."